Okay, so we're going to continue our demos and tutorials on the expansion panel, which is in Material Design Angular version 10. And so right now at the material.angular.io, this is the documentation for Angular material. We're going to go into components. We're going to take a look at the expansion panel, and we're going to go look at the examples, and we're going to look at this particular example and analyze it, do a deep dive of the code, and try to explain some things and what's attractive about this particular example. Okay, so first of all, this is an accordion with expand and collapse all toggles. So notice I do have an expansion panel here. I have 3 of them. One of them is disabled. So the demo is demonstrating that you could disable it. And when you disable it, notice the icon doesn't show, because what's the point of showing the icon if it's disabled? And if I click on one of these other expansion panels, this one has a title, personal data, it has a description, type your name and age. You click on it, you see some content in the panel that's expanded, and you could type in your first name and your last name. And you could collapse that panel. And the same thing with this one. This panel has a day of trip. Inform the date you wish to travel. You click on it, it expands. Notice this icon flipped. From collapse to expand, the icon here changes. And as you expand, you not only see the title and the description, you also see the content, which has the date here. Now notice I click on the date and I see this date widget, which is really nice. This is a component in material design which you can actually do a lot of different things in, and we'll go through some demos with that. And we could also collapse the panel. Now notice the default expansion collapsed and expansion icon here on the right. There's also an additional icon here which gives you a little bit more flavor to what this panel is all about. Here's your account information, personal information. Here's your calendar information, whatever. And this is a flag, your destination, whatever. Okay, so now what is the point of this particular demo? First of all, it wants to show you how you can have a multi accordion, which means you could expand, you could have something called an accordion which has multiple panels, and you could expand them all simultaneously, except the ones that are disabled, and you could collapse them all together. Now, an accordion being multi versus multi being true and multi being false, the difference is that in one case where multi equals false, you could expand only one panel at a time. With multi equals true, you could expand all the panels all at once. So that is a difference. So let's take a look at the code example and go through it with fine detail. Just going through the code, not necessarily the project details, and just let's take a look. What is it about this example that's so special? So we know that our project, while this renders, let me just explain. We know that our project has an Angular JSON file, and the Angular JSON file says we have an index.html, we have a main module. The main module instantiates a root component, and all this nice stuff. So we notice here that there is nothing that complicated about this particular module, except the important thing is that it is a module which is getting bootstrapped. It's our main application module, and it bootstraps our root component. Now, everything else here we've discussed. In our example, we do have some forms and there's some fields, and if we wanted to change the look and feel of those, this injection provider can change the look and feel of our form fields, which we don't want to get into right now, but just reviewing some of that stuff. Other than that, the other nice thing about the app module is the fact that it uses this demo material design module, which gave us all of the material design modules and exported them so all our components within our main app module can access them and use them, which is really good. So from a high-level point of view, the standard model of the documentation still holds. It's very very architected very nicely, and then we know that our Angular JSON file says that this is our index.html. This is the root component that was bootstrapped with our app module. And so if we look at that root component, basically what we see is this. Now this is a little different than the previous example that we went through. And the first thing I notice is, why do we have a view child here? Okay, there's a mat accordion that's being imported. We use the view child annotation here from Angular Core, and the reason why it's here is because my component, when it gets instantiated, has a view, and that view has a child component, which is a mat accordion, and I need access to that view. So let's take a look, and the reason why I need access to that view, because I need to expand all and I need to collapse all. So I need access to control my accordion and expand all and collapse all. So that's why this particular component needs a reference to its view child of type mat accordion. Okay, so let's look at the template code. So the first thing we see up here is this is the template for the root component, and so this particular template has a div tag here with a class associated with it, and there's two buttons there, the expand all and the collapse all. And when you click on them, the first one does an accordion open all. The accordion is really the child of this template. So in my component, when I say accordion open all, I want to make sure that my object instance, that my backing object here, has a reference to that accordion, and I'm actually accessing it right now with this particular handler to do an open all. So expand all is the text. I click this. This template, this whole template, has a backing object, which is my root component. This is an accordion child view, which my expand button needs to reference and expand. And so that's what this example is demonstrating for one, first at a high level. Okay, so now we look at the accordion, and the first thing we look at is we say, okay, this thing is a multi, and the reason why it's got a multi there is because I want to expand all the panels or collapse all the panels, and it must be a multi in order to do that. If multi was equal to false, then I could go expand all and nothing would happen. I cannot expand all with a multi equals false. Let's see if I do this. I could expand all. So that's why I have the multi there with my mat accordion. Now let's take a look at the other aspects of the mat panel. Here's a mat expansion panel. Here's the first one. Okay, so I have expansion header. The header is the one that lets me activate. The header is the one that gives me that default icon, expand, collapse, whatever. So with that, I have an optional title here, personal data. If I remove it, I don't even have the title. Let's put it back. It is optional, and I want the title there. And then I have a mat description. And the mat description also has an icon associated with it, the account_circle. That's this little guy icon. I usually use that for account management or whatever. Let's remove it and see what happens. So it's still formatted really nicely. I still have an expansion panel. It still looks pretty good. Okay, so that's simple enough. The header gives you the functionality to expand and collapse and the default icon. And notice after my header I have some content. Now the one interesting thing here, let's highlight the content. The content is both of these things. The one thing that's interested here is I don't have an ng template here with my content. If I did, this would be a lazy loaded content, but it's not. So this is eagerly loaded and instantiated. So when I look at this thing, these form fields are already instantiated. It's not like the life cycle of this thing is like a router path where I'm instantiating an object and destroying an object, etc. So keep that in mind. If I put this in an ng template, this content in an ng template, etc., it would be lazy loaded. Okay, I just want to point that out. Okay, let's look at the second panel. Now the second panel seems to have some things missing here. First of all, it's disabled, and I'm missing the icon. So let's first remove this thing here. Oops. Let's first remove the disable and see what happens. Oh, now it's enabled, and now my expansion icon shows up. And my expand all works nicely. You can disable a panel, and that can be a dynamic value as well. Okay, let's look at the third expansion panel. And the third expansion panel is here. And it's the same thing. You got this mat expansions panel header, and you could disable it if you want to, but you got a title, day of trip, you got the description, inform what date you need to travel. You got this date range icon. Let's see what happens if I don't know the icons offhand, but what happens? Yeah, so we don't mess around with that. And then you've got this mat form field, and the mat form field has a mat label called date. And there's some mat input here, and it's bound to a mat date picker. And when you get focus, it does a pick, and it opens the panel. And this appears to be in read-only mode, so I can't type into the field. But what I can do is when I choose a date, the date will appear in the input box. The date picker has a hash picker. It binds the date that I chosen to the input field. And so this is a good example of the date picker, and we'll go through that component later. So really, that's really all I wanted to show you with this particular example. I really like it because you know, grabbing data in an expansion panel is a very nice component to be able to use and customize and use for your applications. So that's all I wanted to show you with this particular example, and let's move on to other examples.